Hey everybody, Questwise here, and today we're going to take a look at this Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, the core rulebook. This is sort of in response to Jason over at November Suns unboxing slash flip through of the beginner's box, starter box for this edition, 4th edition, I believe is the newest edition. And so we had talked back and forth just very briefly on the full book and how, and I don't have the starter box yet, but I think I probably will now after seeing his video, because it looks like it would make a very good companion to this book as well too, which I think is really cool. I'm glad that it's not just a beginner's box that you would only use at that point, at just the very beginning, teaching people how to play, but it looks like there's a lot of stuff in there that would be beneficial to a campaign or a setting for this as a complement to this game as well too. A little bit of history with me and Warhammer. When at the end of my high school career, I was given some Warhammer miniatures from a friend of my cousin's. And I didn't even really know what they were for. I just thought they were really cool. This is back in 1993. And I took them with me to college, and I remember I had them displayed out on a bookshelf, and I had some friends who thought it was really cool, and I said, I think it's a game. I think it's called Warhammer. So we went to our local writer's hobby shop in Ypsilanti, Michigan, which is just outside of Ann Arbor, and we found it. We found the game, and we ended up pitching all in together to get the starter box or the beginner box of the tabletop miniatures game, and in addition to playing a lot of second edition D&D back then, we played the hell out of some Warhammer 40K, 40,000, and Warhammer Fantasy a lot. In fact, we even used to take up our beds because they had 4x4 sheets of plywood underneath them, and we'd put them on the backs of chairs to make tables. And our terrain was cups and books and stuff like that. But we played a lot of that. So I became very ingrained into the Warhammer lore, and I played a little bit of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition. Didn't play any of the 3rd, which was the weird big box from Fantasy Flight. And then Cubicle 7 came out with this just recently. And I wanted to just give you kind of a quick look at this and some of the cool concepts inside this as well as the spectacular artwork. This book is beautiful, and that's no surprise, because everything else that's come out of that I've ever gotten from Cubicle 7 has been beautiful. You're talking about the One Ring and your Adventures in Middle Earth, the Doctor Who stuff, all very, very well done. Books are very well constructed, and the artwork is fantastic. And again, just a couple pieces in here as well too. But what I really, really like about this game is that it's gritty. The Warhammer world that was created by Games Workshop is very, very well done. It's got a lot of depth to it. It's got some very, very cool concepts to it, but it's very gritty. So if dark, role-playing, gritty, bloody, pussy, disease-ridden kind of things are not your bag, I would avoid this. But it's also kind of campy, and it's kind of there's dark humor throughout the world and the game and stuff as well too. Character creation is what it is. It's character creation. One of the things I found very, very interesting is that everything can be generated randomly on these tables, and if you choose to do so, if you choose to randomly generate everything about your character, you get bonuses. It kind of helps to separate those people who have picked their character. They know what they want to play, and they build their character to suit their specific needs. And so sometimes if you have players that are doing that, and you randomly, you don't know what you want to play, and so you randomly roll on your thing, you get a little bit more of a benefit, because you might come up with something that's not quite as competitive. And you can see there's a lot of stuff in here that is, there's a wide variety of stuff. So you could be a rat catcher, or you could be a witch hunter. There's like opposite ends of the spectrums of things as well too. I feel, having played 2nd edition, There's a lot of that flavor here, but they did make some changes, and I mean, I couldn't really tell you specifically what those changes are, but I can tell that there are things that are different. As I was reading through, I was like, oh yeah, I don't remember that at all. That must be something new. But a lot of the stuff is still very similar. Grave robber, witch hunter, knight, pit fighter, the rat catcher. There's some a lot of stuff that I remember from the second edition, but a lot of new stuff as well. And so there's charts for everything, attribute tables, all that kind of stuff, and big character creation segment. But some of the other stuff I wanted to touch upon that I thought was really cool. And here's kind of so here's the wizard, the agitator. They all have different career paths that you can take. You can also sort of multi-class by jumping around a bit as well too. But you do get better benefits if you stay within your particular career as well too. So it benefits you to stay within a career rather than jumping around a bit as well too. One of on the page about wizards, one of my favorite things about this system is the magic. To me, magic's always been very important in games, and I want it to have a lot of flavor in a game. That's what I always look for, and in a fantasy game, is a lot of flavor to the magic, and this definitely has it. It's divided up by different types and by like colors, and they have lores surrounding them. They have strictures, different gods of things that you must follow in order to maintain your sort of favor with the god and stuff as well too. So that's really interesting, and I really appreciate that about this. There are a literal butt ton of different career paths in here. So we have the boatman and the witch hunter. I mean, there's tons of them. Smuggler, stevedore. Sorry if that giant plane taking off just wrecked the audio. We're in the middle of a festival here in town, and one of those things is an air show, and so there's a lot of really loud planes flying around as well. Grave robber, outlaw. I mean, there's tons of them in here, and you can see I'm doing it in chunks and just kind of going through. Warrior priest. Unfortunately, I got out of the miniature tabletop market. Like I haven't played any of those in a long time. And so I got rid of most of my Warhammer Fantasy miniatures. I still do have a lot of other miniatures and stuff, but I did get rid of a lot of those, sold them off to somebody who was looking for some. I'm kind of kicking myself now because I think they would work really well with this. Then we got skills and talents. I just want to go through this real quick, and I just want to highlight some cool parts of this. So everything is a D100 system in this as well too. And it's sort of like an opposed, when you're doing combat, kind of an opposed roll. I mean, I won't go into too much detail into that, but this is one of those very first games that as I was reading through it without flipping back and forth, I found that the game made a lot of sense, and I didn't have to reread many parts of it. So kudos to Cubicle 7 for that, in a great layout and design of their game system. And I didn't have to like read a page and go, wait, what? How does that? And then go flip back and try to find something else. It read very well through, and it was a lot of descriptions and examples to the point where I felt very comfortable with the gameplay right after the first reading. I felt like I could just bring it to a table and start doing it. Now there are a lot of optional things like unarmed combat, 2-weapon fighting, mounted combat. There's a lot of extra things you can add to the conflict and the action resolution parts of this game, getting advantage on things. One of the things I found really interesting about this game is that with D100 systems, sometimes it can become a slog fest when it comes to combat, and that you're failing your rolls a lot of times. And so what happens is that every time that you are successful, you get a bonus. It's sort of like a momentum type thing, where you get a little bit of a bonus, and it continues to build the more and more successful that you are. And the minute you fail, it sort of resets back. So it sort of it exhibits that sort of idea that you're in your groove. You've gotten some momentum, and you're doing very well in combat and stuff. And the minute that you get hit and retaliates, throws you out of your groove, and you reset your thing. So that's kind of a cool thing, and allows combat to go a little bit faster as well too, especially at lower levels and stuff when your characters are much younger and early on in the game. lots of conditions and stuff. So the game is a bit crunchy. I wouldn't say it's the crunchiest game I've ever seen, but you do have a lot of different effects and stuff that can hinder or benefit your characters and stuff as well too. So a bit of crunch there as well too. It's not a rules light game by any means. Injuries, pulling your blows. There's a lot of stuff in here, and really corruption. Corruption's a big thing in this game too, because that's kind of one of the main focuses of Warhammer, is that there's Sigmar, the sort of good major god, and there's a lot of ideas of sacrilege and corruption and chaos, and that the witch hunters are there to weed those things out, and the warrior priests and stuff as well too. So there's a lot of ideas of witch hunts and the corrupting effects of magic and chaos gods and stuff as well too. So lots of cool stuff for that. I find that to be a very dark, kind of gritty part of the game, but very, very cool. So here's what I want to talk about with the gods in particular. Let me find a good one here. Yeah, okay, so here we have the cult of Raya, the goddess of fertility, and there's a bunch of different talks about what worshippers are like, the holy sites, penances, and then there are strictures. Each god has one of these little boxes that talks about things that you must do in order to be a part of this cult or this religion. Never feel shame for the flesh Raya gave you. Life is sacred. Do not harm, lest another life is in danger. So there's strictures upon each one, and if you go against those willingly, you will lose favor with the god and stuff as well too. So a lot of different gods, and there's dwarven ancestor gods, goes into elves and stuff as well too. Then there are blessings. These are the sort of the religious spells and stuff as well. Miracles. So again, there's a lot of flavor even within the divine magic system. So there's blessings, there's miracles. They're broken down by miracles by different gods, because gods are going to provide different blessings and miracles and stuff. And then the magic itself here talks about the different winds of magic and the different lores of magic. So there are 8 different lores. There's the lore of light, the lore of metal, lore of life, lore of heavens, lore of shadows, lore of death, lore of fire, lore of beasts. And so they're all broken up individual lores by these, and they're all sort of given different colors and such as well too. But I love the flavor that the magic system has in this game, and it just feels more authentic rather than just saying, hey, I know the spell and it just goes off kind of thing. So it's very, very cool, and I love the sort of grittiness and meatiness. And there are different colleges for each one of the magic systems and stuff as well too. Very cool. Anytime you would miscast a spell, there are tables for that, for minor and major miscasts of spells. And some of them are really, really horrible as well too. And some of them are kind of goofy. Some of them are kind of funny. So, for instance, there's Soul Quake. You gain the prone, can basically you fall down. Soured milk. All milk within 1d 100 yards goes sour instantly. So some of them are kind of folktale things, but they're kind of goofy at times. But some of them are very brutal and very dark as well too. So here we have the different types of how to do channeling and this kind of stuff. Here's a great picture of the different lores and the opposing lores and ones that are similar to each other and stuff as well too. But great game. Definitely worth picking up if you can get a copy of this. It is a little bit on the expensive side. It is a $60 book, but definitely well worth it. You do not need to be a fan of Warhammer in order to play this. You don't have to know anything about it. In fact, in the very back of here, there's a visitor's guide to the Reichland. Reichland is the portion where the core book takes place. It's the sort of main continent. It's sort of equivalent to sort of a weird medieval / Renaissance Italy, because there are gunpowder weapons and stuff in here. Or Germany, I should say. Weird medieval / Renaissance Germany, because there's gunpowder and stuff in here as well too. But very sort of German-esque based. idea, but I feel like later they're going to come out with supplements for other things like Bretonia, which is sort of like the equivalent of medieval France, and there, Chaos Waste and that stuff to the north. So I feel like there's a lot of room to expand, but there's tons of space within the Reichland itself to play tons of adventures and stuff as well too. The other thing I really like about this game is it's very flexible, depending on the kind of game that you want to play. If you want to play a very militaristic game, you can do that. You can make characters that are soldiers and witch hunters and warrior priests, or you can play the very sort of low key sort of city intrigue, that kind of thing, by playing somebody like a merchant or a rat catcher or a craftsman, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of flexibility in this game as well too, which I find very, very cool. But that's Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, the 4th edition. This is by Cubicle 7 in conjunction with Games Workshop. If you are a fan of Warhammer Fantasy, definitely worth checking out. This is a great edition of the game. And like I said, even if you've never even heard of Warhammer before, check out the starter box. Go out. I'll put a link below to November Sun's his video with the contents of the starter box, and start there. And if you really, really like it, then this is definitely a good companion to this as well too. So until next time, I'm Questwise, and I'm out.